In the heart of New York City, Al Pacino, the renowned actor, gripped a thick, leather-bound volume of Shakespeare's plays. His eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and frustration as he held the book aloft, declaring, "The anointed Shakespeare." A voice from the shadows corrected him, annotated. Pacino's face lit up, annotated, "Yeah." The moment was both amusing and profound, encapsulating the struggle to bring Shakespeare's complex world to life on screen. Pacino's film, Looking for Richard, delves deep into the challenges of translating Shakespeare's Richard III to the modern screen. The film is a mix of documentary and performance, where Pacino and his team grapple with the play's intricate family dynamics and historical context. But the real struggle is in finding the right visual style. Pacino's initial instinct is to create a realistic, medieval setting, believing that historical accuracy is essential to bring the play to life. However, this approach often falls short, leading to a series of misfires and rethinks. The quest for the perfect location is a recurring theme. Pacino's team scours the city for a place that can stand in for the Tower of London, where the play's crucial scenes take place. They find a dilapidated church tower, complete with pigeon droppings and crumbling walls, but Pacino is unsatisfied. It doesn't work, he insists. It's got to be a prison. The search continues until they find a more suitable, faux medieval building, with towers and arched windows that better fit the medieval aesthetic. But the film's most powerful moments come when Pacino and his actors break free from the constraints of realistic settings. In many interior scenes, the spaces are intentionally dark, creating a sense of isolation and intensity. The actors' performances, rather than the sets, become the focal point. Pacino's method is to find the emotional truth in the characters, allowing the performances to transcend the limitations of the physical space. The film also explores the broader history of Shakespearean performance, particularly the English histories like Richard II, Richard III, King John, and Henry V. Over the centuries, these plays have been performed in a variety of styles, each reflecting the era's understanding of the medieval period. In the 18th and 19th centuries, performances often emphasized historical authenticity, with elaborate costumes and sets designed to recreate the medieval world. This approach continued into the 20th century, with directors like Laurence Olivier and Orson Welles using grand, medieval-inspired settings to bring the plays to life. However, modern directors like Pacino, Richard Loncraine, and Ian McKellen have taken a different approach. Loncraine's 1995 film Richard III, starring Ian McKellen, set the play in a 1930s fascist Britain, using the Bankside Power Station, now the Tate Modern, as a stand-in for the Tower of London. This setting provides a powerful analogy to the fascist terror Richard unleashes, transcending the need for historical accuracy. McKellen's performance is grounded in psychological depth, but the film's visual style is more about creating a sense of historical process than a precise recreation of the medieval period. Pacino's Looking for Richard is a bold experiment in finding a new way to present Shakespeare's Richard III. By blending documentary elements with performance, Pacino explores the challenges and possibilities of bringing the play to a modern audience. The film's strength lies in its willingness to question the assumptions of traditional Shakespearean performance, pushing the boundaries of what is possible on screen. Through this process, Pacino and his team discover that the essence of Shakespeare's plays lies not in the historical setting, but in the raw, human emotions that drive the characters. In the early days of theater, plays like Shakespeare's were performed without much concern for historical accuracy. Costumes and settings were mixed and matched, often using what was available and familiar to the actors. However, this changed over time, starting with actors like David Garrick and Charles Macklin, who began to experiment with more historically accurate costumes and settings. Garrick, a famous actor and theater manager, occasionally toyed with the idea of using historical costumes, especially for plays set in ancient times. For example, he planned to use a mix of Old English and modern styles for a production of King John in 1750. He also tried using historical costumes for Richard III and II Henry IV in the 1760s, and for his final performances as Lear in 1776, he dressed in what he believed to be historically accurate garb. However, it was Charles Macklin who took the idea of historical accuracy much further. Macklin was known for his meticulous research and attention to detail. When preparing to play Shylock in The Merchant of Venice in 1741, he studied historical accounts of Jewish life and wore a red three-cornered hat, which he discovered was commonly worn by Venetian Jews. For his production of Macbeth in 1773, Macklin went to great lengths to create an authentic Scottish setting. He dressed in traditional Scottish attire, including a plaid and a bonnet, and even had the stage decorated with realistic medieval details like stuffed animals and weapons. Despite his efforts, Macklin's production was met with ridicule and even riots, but his approach laid the groundwork for future historical productions. In the 19th century, actors and directors like William Charles Macready and Charles Keane continued and expanded Macklin's legacy. Macready's production of King John in 1842 was celebrated for its historical accuracy, from the detailed costumes to the realistic stage settings. Macready's approach was not just about visual accuracy, but also about capturing the spirit of the medieval era, showing the raw and sometimes brutal nature of that time. Charles Keane, Macready's successor, took historical accuracy to new heights. Keane was proud of his academic credentials and had a vast library of historical texts and studies. He believed that the theater should be an educational tool, and his productions were designed to be as historically accurate as possible. For example, in his production of Richard II in 1857, Keane included a large-scale reenactment of Bolingbroke's entry into London, complete with 493 extras. He used historical sources to ensure that every detail, from the crowd's behavior to the entertainment, was as accurate as possible. Keane's productions were not just about visual spectacle. They were also about creating a deeper connection to the past. By using historical accuracy, Keane believed that the theater could educate and edify the audience, transforming it from a place of mere entertainment to a space for learning and reflection. This approach was widely praised, and Keane's productions helped to elevate the reputation of the theater, making it a respected institution for cultural and historical education. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the tension between historical accuracy and artistic interpretation continued. Directors like Al Pacino, in his film Looking for Richard, sought to connect with Shakespeare's plays through historical settings and locations, believing that this would bring a sense of authenticity and immediacy to the performances. However, the challenge remains: how to balance the desire for historical accuracy with the need to create a compelling and relevant performance for modern audiences. In the middle of the 19th century, the interplay between historical accuracy and theatrical presentation in Shakespearean productions was a significant concern. The Victorian era, with its penchant for historical detail, brought about a new approach to staging Shakespeare's plays, particularly the historical one. Critics and audiences alike began to demand a level of historical authenticity that had not been as rigorously pursued in earlier times. This shift was epitomized by the work of Charles Keane, whose productions of Shakespeare's history plays at the Princess's Theatre in London during the 1850s were renowned for their meticulous attention to period detail. Keane's approach was to recreate the settings and costumes of the medieval and Tudor periods as accurately as possible, using historical sources such as the Jerusalem chamber portrait of Richard II in Westminster Abbey. His productions were praised for their historical fidelity, with the Times commenting that Keane's ability to renew the course of time and cause the events of the past to occur once more was unparalleled. This emphasis on historical accuracy was not just a matter of visual spectacle. It was meant to enhance the authenticity of the performance and provide a more educational experience for the audience. However, Keane's dedication to historical detail also highlighted the historical shortcomings of Shakespeare's own plays. Shakespeare, while a brilliant dramatist, was not always precise in his historical representation. His plays often contained anachronisms and inaccuracies, reflecting the limitations of Elizabethan historiography. Victorian scholars and critics, armed with a more detailed understanding of history, began to point out these inaccuracies, suggesting that Shakespeare's works, while brilliant, were not always reliable historical sources. This tension between the historical and the dramatic was further explored in later productions. For instance, in the 20th century, the focus on historical accuracy began to shift towards a more interpretive and modernist approach. Productions by the Royal Shakespeare Company, RSC, and others often emphasized the contemporary relevance of Shakespeare's plays, using them as a lens to explore modern political and social issues. This was evident in productions like Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, 1989, which was seen as a reflection of the post-Falklands War political climate in Britain. The transition from a focus on historical accuracy to a more interpretive approach is also seen in the work of directors like John Barton. His 1973 production of Richard II for the RSC and his 1974 production of King John were notable for their experimental method. Barton often rewrote Shakespeare's text to fill in perceived gaps and to make the plays more relevant to modern audiences. For King John, he added over 600 lines, some of which were clearly analogous to contemporary political debates, such as the concerns over inflation and taxation in the run up to the 1974 election. This evolution in the staging of Shakespeare's history plays reflects a broader shift in how history is understood and represented in the theater. From Keane's meticulous recreation of medieval settings to Barton's modernist reinterpretations, each approach reveals a different aspect of the relationship between history and drama. While Keane sought to bring the past to life through detailed historical accuracy, later productions often sought to use the past as a means to comment on the present, creating a dialogue between Shakespeare's plays and the contemporary world. John Barton's production of Shakespeare's King John and Richard II was a bold attempt to bring the plays into a contemporary political context while also reconnecting them to their medieval roots. Barton used various techniques, from adding lines from other plays to creating elaborate coronation scenes, to highlight the political and theatrical elements of the plays. In King John, Barton was particularly interested in emphasizing the play's relevance to modern politics. He incorporated lines from The Troublesome Reign of King John and John Bayle's King Johan, which allowed him to introduce more anti-Catholic sentiment and create a more politically charged atmosphere. For example, he included a scene where King John is humiliated before the papal legate Pandulf, and is crowned with a dunce's cap and given a skull and bone as symbols of his power. This scene, among others, was designed to show the complex relationship between the church and the state, a theme that resonates with modern audiences. Barton also introduced a character named Peter of Pomfret, who served as a kind of chorus and harbinger of death. This character, often appearing in various guises, added a medieval flavor to the production, drawing on the tradition of morality plays where death is a prominent figure. The presence of death as a character was intended to underscore the play's themes of mortality and the transient nature of power. In Richard II, Barton's production similarly sought to bridge the gap between the medieval and the modern. He began the play with a prologue sequence where a character resembling Shakespeare enters, summons the actors, and crowns the actor playing Richard. This ritual highlighted the performative nature of kingship, suggesting that the king's role is as much a performance as it is a real responsibility. Both Richard and Bolingbroke are portrayed as actors playing their roles, with Richard's private face often contradicting the public mask of kingship. Barton's production of Richard II also drew on the medieval concept of the king's two bodies, a theory explored by Ernst Kantorowicz. This idea suggests that the king has a natural body, which is mortal, and a political body, which is immortal. Barton's production emphasized this duality, particularly in the final scene where Bolingbroke ascends the throne, only to be crowned by a figure representing death. This scene suggested that the cycle of power and death is unending, a theme that resonates with the medieval understanding of kingship. Barton's approach to these plays was not just about making them more relevant to modern audiences. It was also about recovering the medieval aspects of the plays that Shakespeare might have overlooked. By incorporating elements from earlier plays and medieval traditions, Barton created a production that was both a commentary on contemporary politics and a homage to the rich theatrical heritage of the medieval period. This blend of modern and medieval elements allowed the plays to speak to a wide range of audiences, offering a nuanced and layered interpretation of Shakespeare's works. Shakespeare's English history plays are a unique blend of the medieval and the Renaissance, reflecting the complex period in which they were written. These plays, such as the two tetralogies covering the Wars of the Roses and the reigns of Richard II, Henry IV, and Henry V, do not fit neatly into the categories of tragedy or comedy. Instead, they are open-ended and mixed in genre, often leaving many issues unresolved. This ambiguity mirrors the historical and cultural shifts of the time, as the medieval world was giving way to the Renaissance. The material and cultural landscape of London during Shakespeare's era played a significant role in shaping these plays. Monuments like Southwark Cathedral and the Tower of London served as tangible links to the past, grounding the plays in a sense of continuity and change. The Tower, for instance, features prominently in Richard III, connecting the play to the real-world politics and history of the time. Shakespeare's audiences would have been familiar with these landmarks, enhancing the play's resonance. Language, too, reflects this blend of the old and the new. Middle English had given way to early modern English during the period covered by Shakespeare's two tetralogies, but the spoken nature of the language remains a crucial element. The histories capture a wide spectrum of speech, from high political rhetoric to the everyday banter of taverns, painting a vivid picture of the nation. The staging of these plays also draws heavily on medieval theatrical practices. The flexibility of the stage allowed for imaginative freedom, much like the medieval place and scaffold conception. This freedom was essential for the performance of the histories, which often required rapid shifts in time and space. The staging of violence, a common feature in medieval cycle plays, was adapted to the Elizabethan stage, adding a visceral and immediate quality to the drama. Shakespeare's characters, particularly in the histories, are often defined by medieval virtues and vices. For example, Richard III is a master of manipulation and deceit, traits that align with the medieval concept of the vice figure. At the same time, the plays explore complex themes of ambition, loyalty, and power, reflecting the emerging Renaissance focus on individuality and human potential. The historical context of the plays is crucial. Shakespeare's histories often serve as a lens through which the past is evaluated in relation to the present and the future. For instance, the history plays set in the Wars of the Roses not only recount the events leading to the rise of the Tudor dynasty, but also reflect the political and social concerns of Elizabethan England. The plays can be seen as a form of Tudor propaganda, casting Richard III as a villain and Henry VII as a savior, reinforcing the legitimacy of the Tudor rule. This narrative aligns with the broader Tudor myth, which celebrated the victory over the Spanish Armada and the triumph of Protestantism over Catholicism. The medieval concept of felix culpa, or the fortunate fall, is also evident in Shakespeare's histories. Just as the fall of man in the Book of Genesis led to the need for Christ's redemption, the fall of Richard III and the subsequent rise of Henry VII can be seen as a necessary step towards a better future. This theme is reinforced by the medieval cycle plays, which emphasize the typological connections between Old Testament figures and Christ, such as Isaac's carrying of wood foreshadowing Christ's carrying of the cross. In the end, Shakespeare's English history plays are not just about the past. They are about the ongoing process of history and the human experience. They reflect the complex interplay of medieval and Renaissance ideas, the tension between the old and the new, and the enduring need to find meaning and shape in the chaotic flow of events. Through his mastery of language, character, and dramatic form, Shakespeare creates a rich and multifaceted tapestry that continues to resonate with audiences today.